G1 clutched her travel bag tighter as a transport ship docked at Nexus 7. Through the viewport, she could see the massive space station spinning slowly against a backdrop of distant stars. It looked like a giant wheel made of metal and glass, big enough to hold a small city inside. She had dreamed about this moment for months, ever since her name was selected in the Earth lottery. Only 1,000 humans each year got to visit the neutral trade stations, and she was one of them. The other passengers pushed past her, eager to step onto alien ground for the first time. G1 let them go. She needed a moment to breathe and remember why she came here. Back home in Seoul, she ran a small restaurant that barely made enough money to pay rent. Her younger brother Hyun-woo thought she was crazy for entering the lottery. He wanted her to stay safe on Earth, cooking for humans who actually understood what Kim Kai was. But G1 had bigger dreams. She wanted to share her food with the universe. Her bag contained everything she valued. A portable cooking unit that could heat up to 500 degrees. 3 dozen vacuum-sealed spice packets. Her grandmother's recipe book, converted to digital format but printed on real paper because that felt more honest. And enough emergency food rations to last 2 weeks, just in case alien food turned out to be terrible. The station interior was overwhelming. Dozens of alien species walked through the main corridor, speaking languages that her translation implant struggled to process. She saw beings with 4 arms, creatures that floated instead of walked, and something that looked like a walking tree. But the ones that made her stop and stare were the Drachnae. Everyone called them dragons, even though they hated the comparison. They stood over 2 meters tall, with scales that shimmered in colors from deep purple to bright gold. Their faces were sharp and angular, with eyes that glowed faintly in the dim station light. Wings folded against their backs, too small for flight but impressive nonetheless. They moved through the crowd like they owned the place, and maybe they did. The Drachnae Empire controlled half the known galaxy. G1 found her assigned quarters on level 7. The room was small but clean, with a sleeping platform, a basic hygiene unit, and most importantly, a power outlet compatible with her cooking equipment. She unpacked carefully, setting up her portable kitchen on the small desk. Tomorrow she would explore the station and maybe find some aliens willing to try her cooking. Tonight, she just wanted to rest. She never got the chance. The lights flickered once, then died completely. Emergency systems kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red light. An automated voice spoke in perfect English through her implant. Station-wide power failure detected. All residents must proceed to designated emergency shelters. This is not a drill. G1 grabbed a bag and ran into the corridor. Other residents were already streaming toward the shelter markers that glowed on the walls. She followed them down 3 levels and through a series of pressure doors. The emergency shelter was a large circular room with benches along the walls and supplies stacked in the center. About 40 people crowded inside, human and alien alike. The pressure doors sealed shut with a hiss that sounded far too final. Another announcement explained that a solar flare had damaged the station's main reactor. Repairs would take at least 6 hours. Everyone needed to stay in the shelter until power was restored. G1 found an empty spot on a bench and sat down. The Drachnae next to her shifted slightly, making a sound like rumbling thunder deep in his chest. She tried not to stare, but it was difficult. Up close, his scales looked like polished gemstones, each one catching the red emergency light differently. He was reading something on a handheld device, ignoring everyone around him. Hours passed slowly. People talked in small groups or tried to sleep. G1's stomach started to growl. She had skipped dinner, planning to eat once she settled into her room. Now that seemed like a mistake. She dug through her bag and found a packet of emergency rations. The label promised nutritionally complete meal replacement, which usually meant it would taste like cardboard. She tore it open and took a bite. Definitely cardboard. The Drachnae beside her made another sound, this one almost like a laugh. Human emergency food, he said in accented but clear English. It is terrible, yes? G1 looked at him in surprise. You speak English? I'm a diplomat. I speak 12 languages. He gestured at his own emergency ration packet. Drachnae food is no better. Efficient but tasteless. We designed it to provide energy, nothing more. That sounds depressing, G1 said without thinking. Then she worried she had been rude, but the Drachnae just tilted his head. Depressing? It is logical. Eating is refueling. Why should it be anything else? G1 stared at him. Because food is more than fuel. It's culture, memory, joy. It's how we celebrate and how we comfort each other. The Drachne looked genuinely confused. Your species finds pleasure in eating. Of course we do. Don't you? No. He said it simply, like stating a fact. We taste things, but we do not think about it. Food goes in, energy comes out. That is all. Something about his tone made G1 sad. She looked down at her cooking equipment sitting in her bag. Then she looked at the emergency rations neither of them wanted to eat. An idea formed in her mind. Probably a stupid one, but she was stuck in a shelter for hours anyway. What's your name? She asked. Carix. And yours? G1. Listen, Carix, I'm a chef. I brought cooking equipment. If I could get some ingredients, I could make us something better than these ration bars. Carix's glowing eyes focused on her. Better how? Better tasting. Actual food that makes you happy to eat it. That seems unnecessary. Probably, G1 admitted. But we're stuck here anyway. Let me cook something, and you can tell me if I'm wrong about food being more than fuel. Carix studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and walked to the supply stacks in the center of the room. He returned with several sealed containers, synthesized vegetables, protein paste, water purification tablets. This is all we have. G1 examined the supplies. Not much to work with, but she had faced worse challenges in her restaurant. Do you have any dietary restrictions? Anything that would poison you? Drachne can digest almost anything. Our biology is very adaptable. Good. G1 pulled out her portable cooking unit and got to work. She used the protein paste as a base, mixing it with purified water until it formed something like broth. The synthesized vegetables were bland, but she had her spice packets. She added garlic powder, gokiguru for heat, and a small amount of doenjang that she had been saving. The cooking unit heated everything quickly, filling the shelter with smells that made people turn and look. 20 minutes later, she had created something that almost resembled kimchi jjigae, though her grandmother would have cried seeing the substitutions. She poured half into a cup and handed it to Carix. Try it slowly, she said. The spice might be strong. Carix lifted the cup to his mouth and drank. His eyes widened. His whole body went very still. He took another sip, then another, drinking slowly like she had suggested. When the cup was empty, he looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. What is this? His voice sounded strange, almost shaken. Stew. A very bad version of a dish from my home. It tastes... He paused, searching for words. Complex. Like many things at once. Spicy but also sour. Salt and something else I cannot name. Umami. The fifth taste. It's hard to describe. Carrick set down his cup carefully. I have eaten for 93 years. I have never tasted something like this. Never felt this reaction. Is it supposed to make your mind feel different? G1 smiled. That's pleasure. That's what I meant about food being more than fuel. The dragon diplomat sat back down slowly. He looked at his empty cup, then at G1, then at her cooking equipment. Teach me, he said quietly. Teach me how to make food like this. G1 had come to Nexus 7 hoping to share her cooking with aliens. She had imagined doing it at restaurants or cultural events. She had never imagined teaching a dragon to cook in an emergency shelter during a power failure. Life was strange like that. Okay, she said. I'll teach you. Neither of them knew that this simple agreement would change to civilization forever. They just knew that something important had happened in that moment, over a cup of improvised stew in the red light of an emergency shelter. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest things. Sometimes all it takes is being hungry together and someone willing to share. Carrix appeared at G1's door 3 days after the power failure. She had been unpacking some dried ingredients when her door chimed. Through the viewer, she saw the tall dragon standing in the corridor, looking uncomfortable. You said you would teach me, Carrick said when she opened the door. He glanced down the hallway nervously. May I come inside? G1 stepped back to let him enter. Her quarters seemed much smaller with a 2-meter dragon inside. Carrick's had to duck slightly to avoid hitting his head on the ceiling. His wings pressed tight against his back. I did say that, G1 agreed, but I thought you might change your mind once the emergency was over. I cannot stop thinking about that stew. Carrick's voice was quiet, almost ashamed. I have tried to forget it. I told myself it was just food, nothing important. But the taste stays in my memory. I need to understand it. G1 pulled out her portable cooking unit and set it on the desk. Understanding food takes time. It's not like learning facts. You have to practice, experiment, taste things over and over. I have time, Carrick said, but we must keep this private. If other Drachnae knew I was here learning to cook, it would damage my reputation. Why? What's wrong with cooking? Carrick settled onto the floor since the furniture was too small for him. Among my people, caring about food is seen as weakness. Warriors do not think about taste. Leaders do not waste time on meals. We eat nutrient-based because it is efficient. Spending hours preparing food would be considered foolish, even shameful. G1 sat across from him. That's sad. Food is one of the best parts of being alive. Perhaps for humans. For Drachnae, it is just maintenance. He paused. Or it was, until I tasted your stew. Now I wonder what else we have been missing. Over the next week, Carrick's visited her quarters every evening. They had to be careful. He came late at night when fewer people walked the corridors. G1 kept her door locked and her window covered. It felt ridiculous, sneaking around just to teach someone to cook, but Carrick's insisted. She started with simple dishes. Rice cooked properly, not the instant kind. How to cut vegetables into even pieces, so they cooked at the same rate. The difference between boiling and simmering. Carrick's absorbed every lesson like a student preparing for an important exam. He took notes on his handheld device, recording temperatures and timing with precision. Cooking is not that exact. G1 told him after he asked for the third time how many grams of salt to use. You have to taste and adjust. Every batch is a little different. But there must be rules, Carrick's protested. Formulas that guarantee success. There are guidelines, not rules. Cooking is as much art as science. She handed him a spoon. Try this and tell me if it needs more seasoning. Carrick's tasted the soup she was making. His face showed concentration as he tried to analyze the flavors. It tastes incomplete, like something is missing, but I cannot identify what. Exactly. It needs more salt and maybe some acid to brighten it. She added both, then gave him another spoonful. Now try. His eyes brightened. Better, much better. How did you know? Experience. After you cook enough, you start to feel what a dish needs. She smiled at his frustrated expression. Don't worry. You'll learn. The breakthrough came when they made bibimbap together. G1 showed him how to prepare each component separately. The vegetables cooked just until tender. The egg fried with crispy edges. The meat marinated then grilled. Everything arranged in a bowl with rice and gochujang sauce. The point is balance, she explained. Different textures and flavors that come together into something better than any single part. Carrick mixed his bowl carefully, then took a bite. He chewed slowly, and G1 saw something change in his expression. Not just pleasure at the taste, but understanding. I see it now, he said quietly. This is not just food. This is composition, like music or art. Each ingredient plays a role. Together they create something complex and beautiful. Yes, that's exactly what cooking is. My people have forgotten this. Carrick looked down at his bowl. We have great artists, musicians, architects, but we dismiss food as beneath such consideration. We were wrong. G1's video calls with her brother became more frequent. Hyun-woo appeared on her screen every few days, his face tight with worry. You're spending a lot of time alone in your quarters, he said during one call. Are you okay? Have you made any friends? I'm fine. Just cooking and exploring the station. The lottery coordinator said you're using a lot of power in your room. More than normal. Are you running that cooking unit constantly? G1 hesitated. She had not told Hyun-woo about Carrick's. I'm experimenting with recipes, testing what works with alien ingredients. Be careful, her brother said. I've been reading about Nexus 7. The Drachnae control a lot of the station's security. They don't like humans much. Some traders have reported problems. I'm being careful, G1 promised. She did not mention that a Drachnae diplomat visited her room every night to learn how to make fried rice. Another human noticed, though. Sora ran a small trading business from a shop on level 3. She sold Earth goods to aliens curious about human culture. G1 had bought some supplies from her during her first week. Sora cornered her in the corridor one afternoon. I've seen a Drachnae entering your quarters, late at night several times. G1's heart raced. He's just a friend. Drachnae don't have human friends. Sora's voice was low and urgent. They tolerate us because they have to, but they don't like us. Whatever you're doing, stop. Those dragons are dangerous. You don't understand. It's not what you think. Then what is it? G1 wanted to explain, but she had promised Carrix to keep their lesson secret. I can't tell you, but it's nothing bad. I'm not in danger. Sora shook her head. I hope you're right, but I've been on this station for 3 years. I know how things work. The Drachnae have rules, lots of rules. If you're breaking one of their rules, even accidentally, they won't forgive it easily. The warning worried G1, but not enough to stop the lessons. Carrix was making real progress. He could now cook several dishes on his own. More importantly, he was learning to trust his instincts, to taste and adjust without following exact formulas. One evening, he arrived with news. 3 other diplomats have noticed changes in me. They say I seem distracted during meetings. One commented that I have been eating less nutrient paste. Is that a problem? They are curious. I told them I have been unwell, but I do not think they believed me. Carrix looked troubled. One of them is Velrith, my military commander. She is very observant and suspicious of everything. If she investigates, she will discover the truth. What happens if she finds out? I do not know. Nothing like this has happened before. There are no rules against learning to cook because no Drachnae has ever wanted to learn. He paused. But there are rules against behavior that weakens military readiness. Some might see this as such behavior. Despite the danger, Carrix kept coming. More than that, he started bringing questions about dishes he had read about. He wanted to know about fermentation, about braising, about techniques that took days or weeks. His curiosity had become hunger, not just for food but for knowledge. There is so much, he said one night, looking through G1's grandmother's recipe book. Humans have developed thousands of dishes, each with history and meaning. We have nothing like this. We had something once, I think, but we lost it. What do you mean? Old stories mention feast fires and ceremonial hunts. My grandmother told me once that ancient Drachnae used to prepare food for celebrations. But that was thousands of years ago, before the Empire unified under military rule. After that, such things were seen as frivolous. Warriors needed efficiency, not pleasure. That's a long time to go without good food, G1 said. Yes. Carrix closed the recipe book carefully. Too long. At a formal dinner 2 weeks later, Carrix made his mistake. G1 heard about it from Sora, who heard it from a trader who witnessed the event. The Galactic Coalition was hosting a diplomatic reception. Food was served according to each species' requirements. The Drachnae received their standard nutrient paste. Carrix apparently looked at his serving and made a comment about the lack of flavor complexity. He suggested that future events might benefit from more attention to taste. The other Drachnae at the table stared at him. One asked why a warrior would care about taste. Carrix tried to explain, but only made things worse. By the end of the evening, rumors were spreading through the Drachnae delegation. Something was wrong with diplomat Carrix. He had strange ideas about food. He was behaving oddly. Velrith, his commander, began asking questions. Carrix came to G1's quarters at night looking shaken. I was careless. I forgot where I was and who I was speaking to. Now Velrith is investigating me. She wants to know why my behavior has changed. What will you tell her? Nothing, if possible. But she is thorough. If she decides to follow me, she will discover these visits. He looked at G1 with something like fear in his glowing eyes. You should stop answering your door. For your safety and mine. What? No, We haven't done anything wrong. That may not matter. If the Empire decides this is dangerous, they will stop it. They will stop us. Carrick stood to leave. I should not have come tonight. I am putting you at risk. Carrick, wait. But he was already gone, disappearing into the corridor like smoke. G1 stood in her doorway, watching the empty hallway. She had thought teaching someone to cook was a simple thing, maybe even a good thing. She had not realized it might be dangerous. She had not considered that pleasure itself could be seen as a threat. She closed her door and locked it. Then she sat at her desk and looked at her cooking equipment. Tomorrow she would call Hyun-woo and tell him what was happening. He deserved to know the truth. But tonight, she just felt sad. Sad for Carrick, who had discovered joy only to have it threatened. Sad for all the Drachnae who went through life never knowing that food could be more than fuel. Sad that something as beautiful as cooking might have to be kept secret. Outside her window, the stars turned slowly beyond the station. Somewhere out there was Earth and home, and a life without complications. Ji-won wondered if she should have stayed there, safe and small. But then she remembered the look on Carrick's face when he first understood what balance meant in a dish. She remembered his wonder at discovering flavor could tell a story. She thought about what he said about his people losing something precious thousands of years ago. Maybe some things were worth the risk. The raid happened at midnight. Ji-won was teaching 5 Drachnae officials how to properly season a stir-fry when her door exploded inward. Velrith stood in the doorway, flanked by 4 security officers. Her scales were deep crimson, her eyes blazing with anger. Step away from the human, Velrith commanded. The 5 Drachnae in Ji-won's quarters froze, caught like children stealing sweets. One still held a cooking spoon. Another had sauce on his face. Ji-won's heart hammered in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. We're just cooking. There's no law against that. Silence. Velrith entered the room, studying the scene with disgust. 5 ranking officials of the Drachnae Empire crowded into a human's quarters, consuming substances of unknown composition. Explain yourselves. None of the 5 spoke. They looked at the floor like ashamed students. Velrith's anger seemed to grow with their silence. Where's Carrick? Not here, one of the officials finally said. He introduced us to the humans' food. We wanted to learn more. This is our fault, not his. Oh, I will deal with Carrick separately. Velrith turned to Ji-won. You are under arrest for corrupting Imperial officials. These 5 are confined to quarters pending investigation. Officers, escort them out. The security team separated the Drachnae officials and led them away. Ji-won stood alone in her kitchen, facing Velrith's cold stare. I haven't done anything wrong, Ji-won said. I just shared food with people who were curious. You have introduced an addictive substance into our culture. You have weakened the resolve of trained diplomats and military personnel. You have created dependence where none existed before. Velrith picked up one of Ji-won's spice containers and examined it like evidence of a crime. This ends now. They took Ji-won to a detention cell on the secure level of the station. The cell was small and cold, with a single bench and a light that never turned off. No one told her what would happen next. No one answered her questions. Hours passed in silence. Finally, Hyun-woo's face appeared on the cell's communication screen. Her brother looked terrified. Ji-won, what happened? The station authorities contacted Earth saying you've been arrested. They won't tell us why. It's complicated. I was teaching some Drachnae how to cook, and their commander decided it was dangerous. Dangerous? How is cooking dangerous? Their culture sees pleasure in food as weakness. They think I was corrupting their officials. Ji-won tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. I might have started an international incident. This isn't funny. They could deport you, or worse. Earth's diplomatic office is trying to negotiate, but the Drachnae won't explain the charges clearly. Hyun-woo ran his hands through his hair. Mom and Dad are panicking. Everyone wants to know what you did. I made bibimbap for some dragons, Ji-won said quietly. That's all. I just wanted to share good food. The trial happened 3 days later in the station's main conference hall. The room was packed with observers from a dozen species, all curious about the strange case. Ji-won sat at a table with a human legal advocate assigned by Earth's embassy. Across from her sat Velrith and 3 other high-ranking Drachnae officials. At the head of the room, a holographic display showed the Flame Court, the ruling council of the Drachnae Empire. 12 ancient dragons appeared in the projection, their faces stern and unreadable. The charges were read aloud. G1 stood accused of distributing addictive substances, corrupting imperial officials, and undermining Drachnae military readiness. Each charge carried serious penalties, including permanent exile from all Drachnae territories. "How do you plead?" asked the council leader, an enormous dragon whose scales looked like polished silver. "Not guilty," G1 said. Her voice shook, but she kept her head up. "I haven't done anything wrong." "You admit to providing food to Drachnae officials." "Yes, but food isn't a crime. I was sharing my culture." "You admit these officials returned multiple times to consume your food." "Yes, because they enjoyed it. That's not addiction, that's appreciation." Velrith stood. "We have documented evidence of behavioral changes in multiple officials. Weight fluctuations, distraction during duties, obsessive thoughts about food and flavor. These are clear signs of substance dependence. Or signs that they discovered something beautiful," G1 argued. "Something your culture has denied them." The room went silent. Speaking against Drachnae culture so directly was dangerous. G1's legal advocate touched her arm in warning, but she continued. "Food is more than fuel. It's art, memory, joy. Your people haven't forgotten how to appreciate food. You've forbidden it. There's a difference." One of the Flame Court members leaned forward. "You claim we forbid pleasure in eating." "Yes. Carrick's told me that caring about food is seen as weakness, that warriors don't waste time on taste. You've built a culture where one of life's great pleasures is considered shameful. And you think you can judge our culture? A human who has existed in this galaxy for barely a generation." The council member's voice was sharp with anger. "I'm not judging. I'm just saying that food doesn't have to be your enemy. It can be part of who you are, not something to fear." Velrith spoke again. "The accused ignores a threat. Already we have reports of Drachnae citizens seeking out human restaurants on other stations. Some are neglecting duties to experiment with cooking. This behavior spreads like disease. If left unchecked, it will weaken our entire society." The trial continued for hours. Witnesses testified about the dangers of human cuisine. Doctors discussed the psychological effects of flavored food on Drachnae brains. Security experts warned about humans using food to manipulate Drachnae officials. Through it all, G1 sat quietly, knowing that nothing she said would change their minds. The Flame Court had already decided she was guilty. This trial was just for show. Then Carrick entered the room. He walked slowly to the center of the hall, his wings partially spread in a gesture of formal address. Every Drachnae in the room stared at him. He wore no rank insignia. They had stripped him of his position. "I request permission to speak," Carrick said. The Flame Court leader studied him. "You have disgraced yourself. Carrick, why should we hear you?" "Because I can explain what G1's food truly is, what it means, what we have lost." Carrick turned to face the holographic council. "I am 93 years old. I have served the Empire for 70 years. I believed I understood the world. Then I tasted human food, and I realized I had been living in darkness." "Poetry from a disgraced diplomat," Velrith said coldly. "How touching." "It is not poetry. It is truth." Carrick gestured to the crowded room. "We pride ourselves on our culture, our art, our music, our architecture. We claim to be sophisticated beings. Yet we treat eating like animals at a trough, consuming fuel without thought. Humans are younger than us by millions of years, yet they understand something we have forgotten." "Which is," the council leader asked, "that life should be lived, not just endured. That pleasure has value. That taking time to prepare food with care and eat it with attention is not weakness. It is wisdom." The room erupted in angry voices. Drachnae officials shouted that Carrick was corrupted, that he proved the danger of human influence. But Carrick stood firm. "Our ancestors knew this," he continued when the noise quieted. "I found records in the Imperial archives, ancient feast fires, ceremonial hunts where the preparation of food was an art form. We had food culture once. We chose to abandon it when we militarized. We told ourselves it made us stronger. He paused. But did it? Or did we just become harder? Less alive? Velry stood. This is exactly the corruption I warned about. Carrick's has been compromised. His testimony is worthless. My testimony is honest, Carrick said quietly, which is more than I can say for this trial. Before anyone could respond, the holographic display flickered. The image changed from the Flame Court Council to a single figure, an enormous dragon, easily twice the size of any other, with scales that shifted through every color imaginable, ancient beyond measure, radiating power that made everyone in the room instinctively lower their heads. Empress Draca had joined the proceedings. I have been listening, the Empress said. Her voice was like wind through canyons, old and deep. This case interests me. The council leader bowed. Your Majesty, we did not expect your direct attention. Clearly, yet here I am. The Empress's eyes focus on G1. Human chef. You claim my people have lost something precious. You claim food is culture, not just fuel. Prove it. G1 stood on shaking legs. How? Cook for me. Cook for the Flame Court. Create a meal that demonstrates your claims. If you succeed, I will pardon you and Carrick's both. If you fail, human cuisine will be banned in all Drachne space. No human will be permitted to share food with my people again. That's not fair, G1 protested. That punishes billions of humans for what I did. Life is not fair, child. It is a test. The Empress tilted her head. Do you accept my challenge? G1 looked at Carrick's. He gave a small nod, his eyes full of something that might have been hope or might have been fear. She looked at Velrith, whose expression promised that she would make failure as painful as possible. She looked at the crowd of observers, aliens from across the galaxy watching to see what she would do. She thought about her grandmother's recipe book, about Hyun-Woo worrying back on Earth, about Sora's warnings that she had ignored, about all the simple moments of joy that cooking had brought her throughout her life. I accept, G1 said, but I need time to prepare. And help. I can't cook a meal for the Flame Court alone. You have 1 month, the Empress declared. You may have assistants, but only humans. No Drachne may aid you. The meal will be served here, on Nexus 7, before the full council and whatever audience wishes to witness. The hologram faded. G1 sat down heavily. 1 month to cook a meal that would decide the future of human-Drachne relations. 1 month to prove that food was culture, not corruption. 1 month to save Carrick's and possibly her entire species from consequences she had never imagined when she first shared a simple stew. Velrith approached the table. You will fail, human, and when you do, your people will pay the price for your arrogance. Maybe, G1 said, or maybe I'll show you what you've been missing for thousands of years. Velrith's smile was cold. We shall see. Hyun-Woo arrived on Nexus 7 2 days after the trial. G1 met him at the docking bay and hugged him tighter than she had in years. Her brother looked tired from the long journey, but determined. Mom wanted to come too, he said. Dad had to physically stop her from boarding the transport. They are both terrified for you. I know. I'm sorry I dragged everyone into this. You didn't drag anyone. You just cooked food. Hyun-Woo pulled back and looked at her seriously. But now we have to make sure that food is good enough to change minds. I brought 3 other chefs from Earth, the best I could find on short notice. The other chefs were talented but nervous. They had volunteered knowing the stakes. If G1 failed, human cuisine would be banned across half the galaxy. That meant no human restaurants in Drachne space, no food exports, no cultural exchange through cooking. Billions of credits in trade would vanish. More importantly, a bridge between species would burn before it was fully built. They set up in a kitchen that the station provided. It was larger than G1 quarters, but still cramped for 5 people. Sora came by with supplies, having called in favors with traders across the station. I got you what I could, Sora said, setting down boxes of ingredients. Real garlic from Earth, grown in hydroponic bays. Some decent soy sauce. Gokyu grew that's only 6 months old. The rest you'll have to improvise with station supplies. This is more than enough. Thank you. Sora hesitated at the door. I'm sorry I told you to stay away from them. I was trying to protect you, but maybe some things are worth the risk. Maybe, Ji-won agreed. The first week was planning. Ji-won knew she could not just make delicious food. The Empress wanted proof that food was culture. That meant each dish had to tell a story, represent something deeper than taste. She spent hours thinking about what food meant to humans, what it had meant throughout history. Hyun-woo suggested they make a traditional royal banquet, the kind served to kings in ancient Korea. But Ji-won shook her head. That's impressive, but it's not honest. We need to show what food really means to ordinary people, not just the powerful. One of the other chefs, a woman named Mina, spoke up. What if each dish represents an emotion or experience? The way food connects to memory and feeling. Ji-won stopped. Say that again. Food is tied to emotions, right? Comfort food for sadness. Celebration food for joy. We could create a meal that takes them through different emotional experiences. That's perfect. Ji-won grabbed a notepad and started writing. 7 courses. 7 different aspects of what food means to human culture. They worked on the menu for 3 days straight. Each dish had to be technically excellent, but also meaningful. It had to make sense even to beings who had never connected food with emotion before. They tested combinations, argued about ingredients, and slowly built something that felt right. The menu they finally agreed on was simple in concept but complex in execution. Memory, celebration, grief, hope, community, love, and perseverance. 7 courses, 7 meanings, 1 meal to change everything. The second week was testing. They cooked each dish dozens of times, perfecting techniques and flavors. The station kitchen ran constantly, filling the corridor with smells that attracted curious aliens. Some drachnae passed by and paused, their faces showing confusion at the unfamiliar scents. Carrick could not visit openly, but he sent messages through secure channels. He was confined to quarters, forbidden from leaving except for basic necessities. But he wrote long notes about drachnae psychology, about what might move the flame court, about the Empress herself. Draca is 600 years old, one message said. She remembers things the rest of us have forgotten. If anyone can understand what you are trying to do, it is her. But she is also practical. Beauty alone will not convince her. You must show that food culture makes us better, not weaker. Ji-won read that message 20 times, trying to understand what it meant. How could she prove food made people better? How could she show strength in something as simple as a shared meal? The third week brought sabotage. Someone broke into their kitchen overnight and contaminated half their ingredients with cleaning chemicals. They lost an entire batch of fermenting vegetables that had taken days to prepare. Security cameras showed nothing useful. Whoever did it knew how to avoid detection. Velrith, Mina said angrily, has to be. She wants you to fail. Probably, Ji-won agreed, but we keep going. We have backup supplies and enough time to start over. They worked longer hours, taking turns sleeping while others cooked. Hyun-woo barely left the kitchen except to acquire more ingredients. Sora helped guard their supplies, sleeping on a cot near the storage unit. The fourth week was refinement. Each dish was tested one final time. They practiced plating, timing, and presentation. Everything had to be perfect. Ji-won could not afford mistakes when the entire meal would be judged by beings who thought food was worthless. The night before the exhibition, Ji-won could not sleep. She lay in her quarters staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A random lottery selection, a power failure, a simple act of sharing stew with a stranger. Such small choices, but they had grown into something enormous. Her door chimed softly. Through the viewer, she saw Carrick standing in the corridor. He looked thinner than before, his scales less bright. Confinement was hard on him. You're not supposed to be here, Ji-won said, but she opened the door anyway. I had to see you before tomorrow. Carrick entered quietly. To say that whatever happens, you have already changed things. The drachnae who tasted your food will never forget it. Even if the Empress bans human cuisine, that knowledge exists now. Seeds have been planted. Seeds might not be enough if we lose everything tomorrow. Perhaps, but I wanted you to know that teaching me to cook was the greatest gift anyone has given me. You showed me that life could be more than duty and efficiency. You reminded me that joy matters. Carrick touched his chest where his heart would be. That will stay with me regardless of tomorrow's outcome. G1 felt tears building but forced them back. Don't talk like it's already over. We might win. We might, Carrick's agreed. I hope we do. But if we do not, I want you to know you did nothing wrong. This was always going to be difficult. Change always is. He left as quietly as he came, disappearing into the corridor like a shadow. The exhibition day arrived cold and bright. The main conference hall had been transformed into a dining space. A single long table sat in the center, set with plates and utensils designed for Drachnir hands. Seats for the 12 Flame Court members and the Empress herself. Around the edges of the room, hundreds of seats for observers from every species in the galaxy. News of the exhibition had spread across known space. This was more than a trial now. It was a spectacle. Humans cooking for dragons. A test of culture and values. Everyone wanted to watch. G1 and her team worked in the kitchen behind the hall. They had 2 hours to prepare 7 courses for 13 Drachnir judges. Each dish had to be served at the perfect temperature and perfect time. There was no room for error. Remember the plan, G1 told her team. We're not just cooking. We're telling a story. Every plate matters. Every detail matters. The doors opened. The Flame Court entered and took their seats. Ancient dragons, powerful and stern, settling into chairs and looking at empty plates with obvious skepticism. At the head of the table, the space for the Empress remained vacant. Then she arrived. Empress Draca entered the hall, and silence fell like a hammer. She was even more impressive in person than in hologram. Her scale shifted colors with each movement, flowing from gold to purple to deep green. Her eyes held the weight of centuries. She sat at the head of the table and spoke one word. Begin! G1 took a deep breath. This was it. Everything they had worked for. Everything she believed about food and culture and joy. It all came down to the next 2 hours. She nodded to Hyun Woo. He carried out the first dish. The first course was seaweed soup, simple and clear. As it was placed before each council member, G1 stepped forward to explain. This represents memory. In human culture, this soup is the first food many of us taste as children. Our mothers make it for us. When we eat it as adults, we remember home, family, and being loved. Food is memory made physical. The Flame Court members looked at their bowls uncertainly. The Empress lifted her spoon and tasted. Her expression revealed nothing. The other council members followed her example. The second course was galbaijim, beef ribs braised until tender, garnished with chestnuts and vegetables arranged in patterns of celebration. This represents celebration, G1 explained. Humans prepare this dish for weddings, holidays, and important occasions. The time it takes to cook properly shows that the celebration matters, that the people gathering matter. Food is how we mark joy. The third course was simple rice porridge, plain and humble, served in rough ceramic bowls. This represents grief. When humans suffer loss, we cannot eat complex food. This porridge comforts without demanding. It nourishes when we are too sad to care about taste. Food is compassion in its simplest form. The fourth course was a salad of sprouted beans and fresh vegetables, bright and colorful. This represents hope. These sprouts were seeds yesterday. Today they are food. Tomorrow they could be seeds again. Food teaches us about cycles, renewal, and growth. Food is faith that tomorrow will come. The fifth course was a large hot pot brought to the center of the table, steam rising from the bubbling broth. Around it, small plates of raw vegetables, meat, and noodles. This represents community. This dish cannot be eaten alone. You must share the pot, cook together, serve each other. Food is cooperation. Food is caring for those around you. The sixth course was handmade mandu, dumplings folded with perfect care, arranged like flowers on each plate. This represents love. Each dumpling is folded by hand. Each fold requires attention and patience. Making these for someone shows you value them enough to spend time. Food is affection made visible. The seventh and final course was kim kai, aged and complex, its flavors deep and fermented. This represents perseverance. This kim kai is 6 months old. It sat in darkness, changing slowly, becoming something better than it started. Food teaches us that time and patience create value, that good things are worth waiting for. The hall was silent when she finished speaking. The Empress ate slowly, trying each dish with complete focus. The Flame Court members followed. No one spoke. The only sounds were utensils on plates and the quiet breathing of hundreds of observers. Finally, the Empress set down her chopsticks. She looked at G1 with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. The Empress looked at G1 for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke, her voice filling the silent hall. When I was young, my grandmother told me stories. Stories about feast fires that burned for days. About hunts where the preparation of the kill mattered as much as the hunt itself. About gatherings where our people would spend hours cooking together, sharing not just food but time and attention. The Empress paused, her ancient eyes distant with memory. I thought those were just old tales. Myths from a weaker time before we became strong. The Flame Court members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. No one interrupted. But this meal has reminded me of something I had forgotten. My grandmother was not telling myths. She was telling history. Our history. The Empress stood, her full height making everyone in the room feel small. We did not lose our food culture by accident. We chose to abandon it. When the Empire unified under military rule 3,000 years ago, we decided that pleasure was weakness, that spending time on food meant less time for war and conquest. We told ourselves we were becoming stronger. Velrith stood as well. Your Majesty, with respect, we did become stronger. The Empire expanded across the galaxy. We became the dominant power. We became powerful. Yes, the Empress agreed. But did we become better? Did we become wiser? Or did we just become harder? She gestured at the empty plates on the table. This human child has shown us 7 aspects of food culture: memory, celebration, grief, hope, community, love, and perseverance. These are not weaknesses. These are the foundations of civilization itself. But Your Majesty, another council member protested, if we allow this, our people will become soft. They will spend time cooking instead of training. They will prioritize pleasure over duty. Perhaps some will, the Emperor said. Or perhaps they will become more complete beings. Perhaps remembering how to feel joy will make them better soldiers, not worse. Better diplomats, better leaders, better parents. She turned to face G1 directly. You asked me to judge whether food is culture or corruption. I have made my decision. G1's heart pounded. Beside her, Hyunwoo gripped her hand tightly. I rule in favor of the human chef, the Empress declared. G1 has proven that food is culture. More than that, she has reminded us that we once had such culture ourselves. She has not corrupted our people. She has awakened something we thought was dead. The hall erupted in noise. Some observers cheered. Some protested. The Flame Court members argued among themselves. Velrith looked furious, her scales darkening with anger. The Empress raised one claw and silence returned. Furthermore, I decree the following. Human cuisine is not only permitted in Draknir space, it is encouraged. Food culture is officially recognized as valuable. Any Draknir who wishes to learn cooking may do so without shame. Any who wish to explore flavor and preparation are free to do so. Your Majesty, this is too much too fast, Velrith argued. The social disruption will be managed. The Empress cut her off. I am also creating a new position. Keeper of the Culinary Revival. This person will research our lost food traditions, work with other species to develop our cuisine, and guide our people through this cultural change. She paused. Carrix stepped forward. Carrix emerged from where he had been standing in the shadows at the edge of the room. He approached the table slowly. His head bowed. You were stripped of rank for caring about food, the Empress said. Now I give you new rank for the same reason. You will be Keeper of the Culinary Revival. Your task is to help our people remember what we forgot. Will you accept? Carrix looked up at her, his eyes bright with emotion. I will, Your Majesty, with honor. Good. You will work closely with humans, particularly with Chef G1, to develop this new understanding. The Empire will provide resources and support. The Empress turned back to the assembled crowd. This is not a suggestion. This is imperial decree. Let it be known across all Draknir territories. The age of denying pleasure is over. We reclaim our heritage starting today. The Empress left the hall, her departure as dramatic as her arrival. The Flame Court members followed, most looking confused, some looking interested, and Velrith looking defeated. The observers began talking excitedly, the noise building like a wave. G1 stood still, trying to process what had just happened. She had won. More than won. She had changed an entire civilization's direction. Hyun-woo hugged her so hard she could barely breathe. You did it. I can't believe you actually did it. Mina and the other chefs crowded around, all talking at once. Sora appeared from the crowd, grinning widely. I told you to be careful around dragons. I never said you couldn't change their entire culture. Carrick approached slowly. For a moment, he and G1 just looked at each other. Then he bowed deeply, a gesture of profound respect. Thank you, he said simply, for everything. I didn't do this alone, G1 replied. You took the first step. You were brave enough to admit you wanted something different. And you were brave enough to share it. Carrick straightened. Now we have much work to do. The Empress has given us a task that will take years. Are you willing to stay and help? G1 thought about Earth, about her small restaurant back home, about the simple life she had left behind. Then she thought about what had just happened, about the possibility of building something new between two species, about teaching an entire civilization to find joy in food again. Yes, she said, I'll stay. The next 5 years transformed Draknir society in ways no one predicted. Restaurants opened across their territories, awkward at first but improving quickly. Draknir's chefs emerged, combining their people's fire-based cooking methods with techniques learned from humans and other species. A fusion cuisine developed that was uniquely Draknir yet influenced by the wider galaxy. Carrick threw himself into researching ancient Draknir food culture. He found old records and forgotten archives, recipes carved into stone tablets from before the Empire unified, stories of ceremonial hunts and feast fires. He worked to revive these traditions, adapting them for modern times. G1 opened a restaurant on Nexus 7 called The Bridge. It became famous across the galaxy, a place where humans and Draknir worked together in the kitchen and ate together in the dining room. The menu changed daily, featuring both human classics and newly discovered Draknir traditional dishes. Every meal was an experiment in understanding. Hyun-woo stayed too. He opened a cooking school next to the bridge, teaching classes to Draknir students who were eager but confused. Many had never thought about food as anything but fuel. Teaching them to taste, to appreciate, to create with ingredients took patience. But slowly, they learned. Some became excellent chefs themselves. The changes rippled outward. Draknir families started eating together instead of individually. They spent time preparing meals, talking while they cooked. Young Draknir began to see food as an acceptable interest, not a shameful secret. The military even incorporated cooking training into some programs, recognizing that soldiers who knew how to feed themselves well performed better. Not everyone accepted the changes. Velrith remained opposed, arguing that the Empire was losing its edge. Some traditional Draknir agreed with her, refusing to participate in what they saw as weakness. But they were the minority. Most Draknir, especially younger ones, embraced a rediscovery of food culture with enthusiasm. Other alien species noticed. If the mighty Draknir Empire could change something so fundamental about their culture, maybe others could too. Humans gained unexpected respect across the galaxy, not as warriors or scientists, but as cultural ambassadors. Earth became known as a culture world, a place where art and music and food mattered deeply. The Galactic Coalition approached G1 with an offer. They wanted to establish a cultural exchange program with cooking at its center. They wanted her to lead it, to help other species learn from each other the way Draknir and humans had learned. G1 stood in her restaurant 5 years after that first exhibition, watching Draknir families share meals together. She saw parents teaching children to cook. She saw young Draknir chefs experimenting with new techniques. She saw Carrick across the room, talking animatedly with a group of students about ancient feast fire traditions. Her communication device chimed, a message from the coalition. They were waiting for her answer about the cultural exchange program. She looked around the bridge one more time. This restaurant had been her dream, but maybe it was time for a bigger dream. Maybe it was time to help more species discover what Draknir and humans had found together. An elderly Draknir customer caught her eye. He was eating a simple bowl of soup, his eyes closed in appreciation. She had seen him before. He came every week and always ordered the same thing. Seaweed soup, the dish that represented memory. She walked over to his table. "Is everything good?" The old Drachne opened his eyes and smiled, something that would have been impossible for his kind just 5 years ago. "It is perfect. This soup reminds me of something I cannot quite remember. Something from long ago, maybe from my grandmother's time, maybe older." He paused. "It feels like coming home to a place I have never been." Ji-won smiled back. That's exactly what food should do. She returned to her office and opened a message from the Coalition, read through their offer again, thought about all the species out there who might be missing something precious without knowing it, thought about how much good food could do if shared with intention and respect. She typed her response. 3 words. "I accept. Let's begin." Through the restaurant window, she could see Nexus 7 spinning slowly against the stars. Somewhere out there, across the vast galaxy, other species lived their lives. Some of them were probably eating right now, consuming fuel without thought or joy. Some of them had maybe forgotten their own food cultures the way Drachne had. Some of them were waiting, without knowing it, for someone to remind them that food could be more. Ji-won thought back to that first night in the emergency shelter, when she made simple stew for a stranger who had never really tasted anything before. When she had no idea that one small act of sharing would grow into something that changed 2 civilizations. She had just wanted to share good food. She had just wanted to show someone that eating could be joyful. Such a simple wish, but it had transformed everything. Maybe that was the secret. Maybe the biggest changes always started small. One person sharing with another, one meal at a time. One moment of connection that grew into something larger than anyone imagined. Carrick joined her at the window, thinking about the Coalition offer. "I accepted it." "Good. The galaxy needs what you can teach." He paused. "What we can teach together." Together, Ji-won agreed. They stood side by side, human and dragon, watching the stars turn. Behind them, the bridge hummed with conversation and laughter and the sounds of people enjoying food. Ahead of them, the galaxy waited, full of possibilities and species who had not yet learned that life could be more than mere survival. And perhaps that was the most human thing she could have done. Not conquering through strength or technology, not imposing human ways on others, just sharing something beautiful and waiting to see what grew from that simple act of generosity. The revolution had begun with a bowl of stew in an emergency shelter. Where it would end, no one could say. But Ji-won knew one thing for certain. Wherever it led, there would be good food, good company, and the kind of joy that made life worth living. And really, what more could anyone ask for?